Good morning, everyone, wherever this finds you across New Zealand and across the world. One of the great things about Solid Ground and about doing these Facebook Live, well, I call them Facebook Lives. Of course, you could be viewing this on LinkedIn, you might be viewing it on YouTube, Twitter, or as we call it now, X. But the great thing is people can view it all around the world. So hello to everyone. Lovely to have you join me. If you're just logging in, know that, of course, well, if you're watching this, you're watching it somehow and somewhere. But if you want to make any comments, because this is live, if you've got questions, always love questions. If you've got questions or concerns, criticisms even, know you can message via the Family First Facebook page. So if you're viewing this, for example, on my Facebook page, that's tremendous. But if you want me to see your messages live in the chat, which is just to my side, so if you see my eyes darting, you know what I'm doing. If you want your message to come to me live here in the studio, jump onto the Family First Facebook page and type in your thoughts or questions there. Give me a shout out, let me know where you are in the world. So for those maybe joining the first time, I'm in Auckland. It's a very, sunny at the moment as I look outside, but rather windy day. And also a little bit cold. Hey, but much to discuss today. There's a few, major topics. There's a bit of a heads up. One is actually around that big question of euthanasia. You guys know I'm pretty hot on life issues, and if you've been following any of Family First's work of the last, it is probably coming up a week, you'll know there's been some substantial and big news, whistleblowers in effect. So we'll talk around that. There's a few other topics to touch on as well, but I can see some messages coming in. So good morning, Ian. Lovely to have you join me. And to Philippa from beautiful, so Philippa's from Whitianga, the beautiful Coromandel Peninsula. I've really got to get back. We were, Rachel and I, was it a few months back, we're in Cook's Beach, but we took the long way round. As you will know, Philippa, there's been, is it 25A? The road 25A was closed, but yeah. Anyway, Chris is joining me. Chris is from Napier. Lovely to have you here. Hopefully it's gorgeous and lovely down there in the bay. It is the bay, isn't it, or the bays? You can correct me on that. I remember now a former colleague telling me the difference between the bay and the bays. But anyway, lovely Napier. So guys, I thought I'd start with something which I think is both amazing and incredible, and nothing to do with ethics, nothing in some ways to do with politics, just something in and of itself quite amazing. So I'm going to share this video with you when I can find it. And here we go. This is just incredible stuff. So, and I'll make a few comments on it as well, but just check this out.
Booster coming in hot for booster catch. We're going to ignite 13 of those Raptor engines, and this view is incredible right now. You can see how fast this vehicle is moving on the left hand. Landing burn has been ignited. We're now down to 3 Raptor engines. We can see those chopsticks now in the air.
Hello, we've just witnessed history. Oh my goodness, they've done it. They've done it first time. That was absolutely astonishing.
So some of you are going, what the? Well, what you were watching there, and I'm going to play it again, because what you are seeing is engineering history. That is one of Elon Musk's SpaceX booster rockets. So imagine the big, it's about 20 stories high, just to give you some idea. The booster rockets which propel the spacecraft into space. And if you follow any of this stuff, you know that basically in the past, when you think of NASA's spaceships, they detach and they burn up in the atmosphere. It's a complete waste. So one of Elon Musk's desires is that these things can be reusable. But they can't just drop them back to the ocean. So long and short, what you are watching is a 20-story high rocket coming back from space, and the speed's on the left-hand side. It's where that round circle is, coming back literally at thousands of miles an hour, and they've slowed it right down and landed it right next to that gurney. I mean, it's just, if you just think about it, it is absolutely incredible. And because it's incredible, we're going to watch it again, because now that you know what it is, I mean, I don't know about you guys, just parking a car, parallel parking a car can be difficult enough. And these guys have taken a 20-story high rocket, plummeting back to Earth, and managed to land it first time right next to this platform. It's incredible.
Booster coming in hot for booster catch.
We're going to ignite 13 of those Raptor engines, and this view is incredible right now. You can see how fast this vehicle is moving on the left-hand screen.
Landing burn has been ignited. We're now down to 3 Raptor engines. We can see those chopsticks now in the air.
Hello, we've just witnessed history. Oh my goodness, they've done it. They've done it first time. That was absolutely astonishing.
Anyway, I just find it beyond incredible. Yeah, amazing. As some have pointed out, I think Amanda says it's a waste of money and resources. Well, it could be. I personally don't think it is. I think it's it's really important for us moving forward. But even if I was to put that to the side, the money and the costs and where else it could be spent, just the technical prowess to be able to do something like that is just, well, to me it's mind-boggling. Granted, I'm not an engineer, but I just find it absolutely incredible. And what I also am struck is, and I put this on my own social media, you know, the left are hating on Elon Musk at the moment. And yet here is a man, now granted not just himself, I mean an entire team of people, but you know, he's in some ways the genius behind a lot of this, or at least the catalyst, not just in money but in mind, is landing massive. I mean, it's like 213 feet tall rockets back on Earth right next to a platform. I mean, it's incredible stuff. But that's sort of one of the quick, if you will, political points to make. Particularly around Musk, you'll notice that almost all the coverage these days, and by the way, I'm not waving a big flag for him. He's, as I say, he's probably got the classic stereotype of someone who's a genius academically or mentally. There's also a bit of madness there, but the left are hating on him now. They used to love him when he didn't really get too political, or at the very particular way, excuse me, when he wasn't really treading on their topics. But as Musk has become more vocal on everything from trans issues to the wider politics, now he's supporting Trump quite explicitly. They're absolutely hating on him. And one thing I've noted is just the constant attacks by mainstream media on Tesla, on his platform X, anything they can do to attack. And then you have something remarkable like this. Anyway, Amanda's asking, moving forward to where? Look, I think space exploration is going to be, as they say, is going to be one of the next steps forward back to the moon, with all the scientific opportunities there. I mean, there are some who sort of feel that we've all got to get off this Earth because it's about to blow up. That's not quite my view on that one, but I think space exploration's amazing. Anyway, enough of space. Here's me all over the place, but you might have noticed on something much more serious and ethical, and then a few other topics. But I thought I'd just use a good chunk of today to talk about this when I find it. When I find it, because isn't it typical when you need it? Aha, here we go. So good on Isaac Davison, actually, from the Herald. Last week broke an exclusive that 2 of the 3 reviewers on the End of Life Choice Act whistle blew what was happening in euthanasia in this country. And I'm going to go through much of it as quickly as I can. But basically what they're pointing out is major problems in our euthanasia scheme. And as the headline says, it's so limited, the reviewing is so limited that there could be wrongful deaths. And, you know, we've hinted at this for a while. You know that I was on Q&A with Jack Tame about 3 weeks ago, saying that there were problems. So it's really encouraging to see that others are speaking out. And you've got to understand these two whistleblowers, these two doctors, one an academic doctor, one a medical doctor, are right at the heart of the system. And the other thing I'd quickly note as we go through it is, apart from Isaac and the Herald, no other mainstream media has chosen to pick this up. So we're talking about a life and death issue here, and there'll be people listening in at the moment who are much more, say, pro-euthanasia than not, and that's, well, something I disagree with, but, I can understand people have different opinions. But you should be really worried about this, that the system is not working properly or well, and New Zealand's mainstream media, as useless as they are not reporting this. Bar one, again, kudos to Isaac Davison, kudos to the Herald for running the story for a short time. But how is this not? You've got to ask yourself the question, and ask yourself again after I've gone through some of the problems. Why is it that mainstream media is not reporting it? You look at whatever's in Stuff today, or the Post, or on TV1's news. For while it lasts, TV1's about to shut their news down, and they'll be talking about all sorts of rubbish. They'll be repeating the old stories month after month. Why are they not reporting this? And this stuff is serious. So just to give you a bit of a hint, and I've got some of my notes here so I don't get it all wrong. One of the first examples that these reviewers have brought up is actually that there was a woman euthanized who didn't speak any English. Now that in itself is not a scandal, but no interpreter was even present. So just think about that for a moment. No interpreter was present when the decisions were being made. So as you know, you're meant to talk to the patient, understand their needs. Why do they want to terminate their life early? Are they under any coercion? How that can be done without an interpreter is a little bit confusing to me. I know enough about medicine. I'm obviously not medically trained, but I know enough about medicine that conversation's relatively important in diagnosis. It's very difficult to understand how they think you could have made this diagnosis. So, as you say, no interpreter. It's just, it's terrible. Stories don't match. So what do I mean by this? The reviewers noted that what they get in writing, so just by way of context, these 3 reviewers are meant to look at every euthanasia case to make sure that the processes have been followed. Some would argue those are safeguards. I've always maintained there are no safeguards. It's just a selection of processes. But the processes are not being followed. And one thing they noted was that what was in writing did not accord with what doctors were telling them in voice. In other words, these reviewers would from time to time call up the doctors and just go, could you just talk us through what happened? And what those doctors say happened versus what's written were 2 different things. Now again, you can be the most pro-euthanasia, pro-death advocate out there, but you must surely go, hold on, there's a bit of a problem here. The reviewers also noted, and get this, that the reports they receive are so light in detail, they don't really understand at times why euthanasia or physician-assisted suicide was recommended. There's no prognosis, that's meaning, what the future expectations is. There's no diagnosis. Sometimes even the conditions weren't recorded. And get this, there's no even note of when the lethal dose was given, nor how long it took for a person to die. Because look, the pro-euthanasia camp, firstly want to tell you there's no problems, and we've already touched on 3. The other thing they want you to believe, which is wrong, is that once you've been euthanized, once they inject you, I can't tell you what the drugs are, but I'd get arrested, or is it fined? You're not meant to tell people what they are. But basically one is a muscle relaxant, just basically means you can't fight back, and the other stops your heart. Now, the thing is, pro-euthanasia advocates want you to believe that you'll die very swiftly. In a lot of cases you do, within a minute or 2. But we know from overseas jurisdictions, and importantly we don't know here because we don't recall the detail, some people can take hours and hours to die. So, that's a huge gap in reporting. When were the drugs given? And how long did it take someone to die? Because actually, I want to know, not in every personal case, but in generalities, is it working or not? The reviewers also pointed out they noticed a growing trend, because we've had about 1,000 euthanasias so far in New Zealand in 3 years. So that's another thing to bear in mind, over 1,000 people, which is quite an extraordinary number, because I remember when I was on the select committee being told the numbers would be in the tens. Well, we know, and I knew then, we're going to be in the hundreds. But the reviewers noted that a lot more people were requesting and receiving euthanasia in rural areas than urban. And the big correlative factor here is that you don't have as much palliative care access in the rural areas. In some places you can, but mostly you can't. And so when the reviewers went to the Ministry of Health and said, can we get a little bit more data? They were basically told to bugger off. Again, these are the reviewers of euthanasia. So, there's major problems there as well. Why are they not being given this data? They also noted that a lot of the reports coming to them were blank. Again, David Seymour and other advocates of euthanasia will tell you just how wonderful their safeguards are, and there's all these reports and documents and writings. Well, actually, most of them are blank. The reviewers said they were receiving blank data. The reviewers also pointed out that for months on end, the committee did not sit. So again, there was no review panel. It's just remarkable. And the Ministry of Health, that is, seems to have gone out of its way to obfuscate or block these people, trying to make it as difficult as possible for them to do their jobs. And get this, when these reviewers, again, a medical doctor and a ethicist raised their concerns, they were told, just imagine it's all going fine. Nothing to see here. I mean, that's incredible. And then around all of this, the final kicker is that these two reviewers did not have their contract renewed. So as they began to raise questions, with ministers too, by the way, across both governments, so both to this current government and the previous, they raised their concerns. They were basically told, go away. And then they were effectively sacked because they were asking questions. Now, I keep saying it, you might be someone who's comfortable with euthanasia. I disagree with you, but I can understand that there's a different point of view. But you should be rightly concerned about this. If it's meant to be a great system, why is it that the ministry and ministers won't allow the full release of data? Why are the reviewers being sacked for raising their concerns? And one of the reasons is that the minister in charge of all of this is David Seymour. And he's the architect of this end-of-life or euthanasia law. He loves it. He thinks it's great. He's its biggest proponent. And he's the one who goes around in the public saying there's absolutely nothing to see here. And when two eminent doctors, losing my voice, when two doctors on his appointment panel or his review panel that he's appointed question his narrative, he sacks them. As I wrote in my Substack, it's a bit like the fox in the hen house. And actually, it's a real failure of this government that he's actually the minister in charge. It is beyond, ridiculous. It's ethically wrong, politically naive, to put the architect of the Euthanasia Act in charge of the review panel and in charge of the review. Because he's doing exactly what we thought he'd do, which is anyone who questions his narrative, he sacks them. And I have no doubt, as this Ministry of Health review is now underway, that if they don't give him what he wants, he'll change the document. In other words, when the ministry sends him drafts, he'll just keep sending them back until he gets what he wants. And this is a real moral failure of this government, that he's even in that role. And it's a terrible moral failure that, again, good people who are saying, hey, look, there's some real issues here. Are just sacked. And as I said right at the start, I think it's exceptionally sad that New Zealand's media is not reporting this more widely. I mean, look, we shouldn't be rending garments in the streets and screaming from the top of buildings, but we should certainly be having a conversation. But mainstream media are more than happy to basically deny what's going on because it doesn't suit their agenda. And we've seen this before. Remember when Family First was leading the cannabis referendum? Day after day was pro-drug propaganda in the media, day after day, with the occasional, hey, there's some concerns here. I think some independent research, excuse me for a second, some independent research was done which showed that I think it was over 70% of all reporting during the the cannabis referendum was for it. So there's no balance is what we're saying. But anyway, look, it's a big topic, guys. It's a heavy topic. And I see actually what I'll do is I'll go to some questions or thoughts. But you can see the problems here. And again, as I said on Q&A, I don't want to over-egg things. This is not the end of the world. Personally, I'd like to see euthanasia removed from our law books. I don't think that's realistic, being a realist that I am. But I really think New Zealand has to wake up and realise there are problems here that need to be addressed. And we have to also realise we have a media complicit in hiding what's happening and a minister in charge who is intent of making sure nothing questions his narrative. So Melanie says, this is around the media, a trained socialist puppets. Yeah, well, I think, unfortunately, a lot of them take a moral position on a topic. And what I mean by that is they choose, in this case, they say euthanasia is a good thing, and therefore they're never going to report anything. They're never going to report anything different to that. The reviewers here, Amanda notes, don't have to know the person. That's true. To be fair, the person's already dead. They've already been killed. But the reviewers are there to make sure that, the processes have been followed. And as we're saying, when the reports to you are either blank, don't have things like the diagnosis, what's even wrong with the person, when they call the doctor and they don't confirm what's in writing, that's all a problem. And Amanda's also nailed it here, because actually pro-euthanasia advocates have written this quite explicitly. Euthanasia saves money. It's cheaper to kill someone with a lethal injection than it is to actually give them palliative care. Rosie points out that people with motor neuron disease are not going to get better. Look, I understand that motor neuron disease like Huntington's and is it Lou Gehrig, there's some terrible diseases. I just make two, if I might, Rosie, two quick, well actually three. One is I think we all can have great sympathy for people going through those situations. We know only about 7% of cases in New Zealand are actually in that category. So for the sake of argument, if we said, okay, motor neuron disease and other serious neurological diseases are okay for euthanasia, we've still got to then work out why 93% are being terminated for other reasons. The other is, I think it is, how do you protect the vulnerable? There's always difficult cases, but one of the reasons we've never allowed euthanasia is that, as we're seeing, it's not just about motor neuron disease. It becomes about many, many others. And we're looking into Canada now. I've just actually done a recording for my podcast, or Family First podcast that I host, that are noting that mental illness is about to come in now. So it starts with the difficult cases, Rosie, like motor neuron disease, but it's quickly spreads. Christine and Brendan, thank you. Always happy to bring these things up. Well, there is abuse in the system. Well, we suspect there is. I better be clear about it. We suspect. We can't prove it, which is what these two doctors were saying. Well, there's just no proper reporting, and I suppose that's one of the big things. You're being told a lie day after day by pro-euthanasia advocates that everything is tickety-boo. Well, they can't say that because there's no evidence. Philippa notes here, it's a slippery slope. Well, I often argue it's actually a cliff. I mean, we've seen it in New Zealand. As I mentioned, only 7% of people seeking euthanasia are with those serious neurological examples, which we all fall back to. A lot of people will mention them, like Rosie and others, quite rightly. I mean, motor neuron is a terrible disease. But as I say, most people are not seeking euthanasia for that reason. It's a big issue. Deborah notes that she's been a nurse at end of care and opposed. Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, look, you're at the coalface. I've been at a number of people's deaths and passing, and at times it can be really uncomfortable for people there, but often, and I'll defer to the likes of Deborah, people don't quite understand often what's happening at the end of life. It's quite normal that people don't eat, they stop drinking. That's what they call the death rattle. There's all these strange noises that can be quite disconcerting to witnesses or people there. But in terms of the person themselves, they're just slipping away. Karen's using an example here of a mother to hurry up to buy a boat. Look, we've always, long and short, how to detect coercion is difficult. We know in a lot of cases people just sort of feel that, life's not worth living because I'm a burden to others. And as I sometimes darkly joke, where there's a will, there's a family. Yeah. Anyway, if you want to read more, so excuse my voice this morning, I don't know why it's all clogged up. If you want to read more, know that, I'm looking for it here, so you know that both Bob and I, as in Bob McCoskrie, write Substacks. Gentle competition. Bob is beating me hands down. He writes far more prolifically. But if you want to read it's called On Point, so substack.com, and then look up my name or On Point. And this is one of my recent ones that outlines the euthanasia issue. And just as of this morning, Bob has written his own one. As he says, it's a big fat smokescreen, not a slim smokescreen, it's a fat one. So we are busily writing here if you want to, obviously write and engage. Bob's also done one on the end of the disinformation project. You might remember during the dreaded COVID years, we had these academics telling us that everything and anything that didn't fit a Marxist feminist worldview was fake news. I think plaiting hair and being on Pinterest was a sign that you were a terrorist. So this is just another example of Bob's Substack. And I've written one too on, the sinking of the Manawa Nui. So look, long and short, lots of things to read if you want. You don't just have to watch here. Hey, look, with the last couple of minutes, I thought I'd just touch on a foreign affairs issue and a local issue. So the foreign affairs one, if you guys follow this stuff, is our dear friends in communist China continue to threaten Taiwan. So that map you see there is Taiwan. And this is the boxes. The red ones are the most important. This is the Chinese forces that continue to do exercises to encircle and cut off Taiwan. And you go, well, why is this relevant? Well, the two very quick points. One is, at the end of the day, Taiwan is a wonderful, vibrant democracy. They had to actually fight hard to become a democracy. They broke off the shackles of a very authoritarian regime, and I don't mean the Chinese Communist Party, but Chiang Kai-shek's party that used to run the country. Long and short, they're a vibrant, wonderful democracy, but every time that they express themselves, because they've just had a democratic election, China gets all bully boy-esque. And so, the blue boxes is where previous exercises were done, then yellow, and then red. So long and short, you can see how the Chinese forces are just trying to encircle the island and practice their drills and threaten the Taiwanese people. Lots of room for miscalculation, but it's just threatening. And that's the second point. For anyone who goes around and always talking about New Zealand's trade with China and how important China is, which is true at one level, that is true, just remember what violent bully boys this Chinese Communist Party is. And we might just want to pause every so often and ponder. The government might like to do this as they kowtow to China and they bend over, that this is who they're doing it to. This is a regime, and I acknowledge we get economic benefits. That's why we've got to divest away from China, because at the end of the day, this is a violent, autocratic regime. And I just, said it to former colleagues, and I'll keep saying it. We've just got to be very careful about who we're getting into to bed with. And trade is good, but, the people we're trading with, the Chinese communists, are the same people who surround the democratic island of Taiwan and day after day threaten to wipe it out. So just, be careful who your friends are. And then last one I thought I'd share is this. It didn't get much news because, again, the media doesn't really like picking on the left wing. Dear old Golders Garriman is appealing her shoplifting conviction. So she was found guilty, understandably, a few months back but she's appealing her sentence. Now, to be fair on her, I think part of the reason is, she doesn't want a conviction. Basically, being convicted has major issues for her, which is you can't get your legal or law practicing certificate back. I think it might even have implications on travel. So the consequences of the conviction are quite hard. But, at the end of the day, the old adage, isn't it? Do the crime, you do the time. And now it's obviously up to a judge. There's lots of nuances, but I was just sort of struck our justice system, and this is not just about Golriz, by the way, guys. I actually work quite well with her on a number of topics, so it really isn't personal. But it'll be interesting to follow this particular case because we seem to be going further and further into a situation now in our almost farcical justice system that you do crimes and yet you don't really pay much of a price. We're seeing far too much use of name suppression orders, for example. And get this, in the last couple of days, the Solicitor General's put out guidelines that prosecutors need to take race into consideration when deciding to press charges against someone or not. Are they Māori or are they something else? And so you go, okay, did we have sort of one rule of law, or is it, it's slightly different now? It's just a very bizarre situation, and I say it is making, I think, our justice system a bit of a joke. So I just thought I'd put that on your radar. So again, she's not saying she's not guilty. I suspect what they're trying to argue is that the conviction they think is too harsh. And, I'm no lawyer. Personally, I think it was quite proportionate for the tens of thousands that was stolen. But you can understand where she's coming from, which is the conviction means that she won't be able to practice law, etc., etc. So, yeah, but my fundamental point, don't do the crime. Don't do the crime. Ian sums it up. They better not reverse it. Well, let's see. I've got real concerns at times with our judiciary here in New Zealand and what they come up with. Anyway, so last couple of quick pointers that I've told you about the Substacks. Bob and I both write there most weeks. Bob writes at least 2 or 3 times a week. So he's prolific. I don't know where he finds the time, but he does on all sorts of topics. Know that you can do that. You probably know that I also do a radio show every Friday morning. Actually, Rachel and I are going to be in Queenstown at the studio this Friday. So Friday morning I'm actually off, not in the studio I'm able to do here in Auckland, but actually we have a studio down in, or RCR does, down in Christchurch, in Queenstown. And so Rachel and I are going to be down there, so my show's going to be coming live from that studio, so make sure to join me there. And then check out all these other amazing Family First presentations, because there is no shortage of them. Here's just a teaser.
If you're looking for news that you can trust, commentary on key family and social issues, and conservative conversations, go no further. Family First has them all. Monday nights, live at 8 p.m, Straight Talk with our panel. Tuesday mornings, live at 8 a.m, Solid Ground with Simon O'Connor. Wednesdays, watch for the latest episode of Pulse Point to drop. We watch the news so that you don't have to. Thursdays, live at 5 p.m, political playback with Bob McCoskrie and Simon O'Connor discussing the week in Parliament and politics in general. Plus, there's regular episodes of social commentary with Mick Blogg and interviews on family matters throughout the week. You can watch these live and also on demand on our website, Facebook page, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and on our YouTube channel. Finally, something worth watching that you can trust. Go to familyfirst.watch for more details.
Who needs Netflix, eh? Seriously, there's amazing content. It's a live shows like this, and I'm just loving all the comments coming through. Sorry I can't get to all of them here on the show today, but lots of also good solid content. About to drop another Family Matters, talking to an expert in family dynamics from Canada. And last week I sat down with John Anderson. He's a former Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, amazing man. and we talk about why the West has lost confidence in itself. So that was fantastic. And the week before that, an amazing woman called Katie Faust. If you were at our forum a few months back, you'll know Katie is just straight down the line. So she and I talked surrogacy. So there's just no shortage. So we've talked surrogacy. We're talking with a former Deputy Prime Minister. And I said this week with an expert in family dynamics. So there's just no shortage of content, guys. And the last thing I will say, because I've sort of forgotten, what was the last thing I was going to add? It can't have been important. But lovely to join you all this morning. Oh, that's right. I was going to ask you a question, and feel free just to put it right in comments because I'll have to log off in a moment. But let me know if this day and time works for you. I've had a few people suggest that because we have a live panel on a Monday night, for those of you who follow what's called Straight Talk, some people have found that it's a bit quick. There's a whole Monday night panel on topics, and then boom, here's me chatting to you on a Tuesday morning. So let me know if this day and time suits. You might go, hey, better on a Wednesday, be better to be earlier, later, maybe it should be in the evening. Just let me know. But in the meantime, you have a wonderful Tuesday. God, what day is it? Have a wonderful Tuesday. We'll see you next week.